and we're back. Today is another Sunday, so why don't we play another game? Let's move up to medium and let's see if we can skunk them again. And of course, as always, the computer doesn't have a timer, so we can spend as long as we like thinking about our move. And here we have a choice between we have to split up one of our potential runs. Or run, that is. On the one hand, if we get rid of something like 4-4, there's no way for us to get a 2 and hit a really strong double run, or a 5. Those would be really nice. But if we keep all of those cards, then we have to split up our run, and we have to sacrifice 3 points to do it. Now, in situations like this, we can think about what we're really giving up in the moment. So if we discard 10 Jack and we don't hit anything of value, we don't hit a 2 or a 5, then we've really given up 3 points. Whereas if we throw away 4-4, then we're keeping the 3 points. If we throw away Jack 10, then we're keeping 2 points that we can see. And if we throw away 4-4, then we're keeping 5 points. So splitting up the run is sacrificing 3 points. Is that worth it here? Probably not. If we hit a 2, then the 2's already pretty good in our hand if we throw away 4-4. 2-3 adds to 5 and it combos with our 10 Jack Queen and gives us 9 points. Whereas if we throw the 10 Jack and we get a 2 on top, we're going to get 8 points for the double run and 2 points for the 2-3-10, which is only 1 extra point. It's not that much more. And if we hit a 5, then sure, we hit the double run, 3-4-4-5, for 8 points, and the 5 Queen gives us 2 points. And that's actually, we don't get much out of that. There's no compensation for that if we hit a 5. But we often don't really think about 5s that much as coming out on top, and we don't really worry about them because our opponent's going to throw lots of 10s away anyway. So let's go 4-4, hit the Jack, the double run is really fantastic. And what do we want to play here? Well, we can see 2 Jacks, so let's play one of our own. And we can go 10 or Queen here. We want to keep jumping up. Another 2. Ordinarily, I would say that our opponent has a lot of 8s here. 2-2-5-8 is a very good hand. And this is probably the point in which we can explain how we should think about our opponent's last card. So when you've seen most of the cards in your opponent's hand, how do you work out what the most likely cards are? The easiest way to do that is just to think, what are the cards that are going to make their hand the most valuable if you ignore the card that comes out on top, or if you average over the possible top cards. In this case, if our opponent has a 3 or a 2, then our opponent is expecting to get quite a lot of points out of their hand. So if they had the last card was an 8, then they would have 6 points already in their hand, and the 5 is a good card to keep because that is going to have a lot of 10s come out on top. If our opponent has something like 2-2-3-5, that's also going to be a high scoring hand because a lot of the time the top card's going to be 10 and they have plenty of ways to make 15. So because of that, because there is a chance they've got a 3 in their last card and they've got a Queen, we're going to, if they've got a chance of having an 8, we're going to play our Queen. They had a Jack, so they didn't pair our first Jack, which is very, very nice. And we've done well here. Okay, 2, 3, 5, 5, 6, 8. So the first thing to notice is that we've got a combination that makes 5 here. We've got double 5 in hand, which is very strong, and 6, 8 is also quite close together. We can have a look at the combos in our hand. We've got quite low cards, so we should search for combos, and we see that we've got 2, 5, 5, 8 for 6 points. And we also have 2, 3, 5, 5 for 4 points. Now, if we imagine, though, that we could see the top card, and 16 out of 46 times the top card is a 10, that means that our 2, 3, 5, 5 is going to improve a lot. And it improves a little bit more than 2, 5, 5, 8. One last thing to think about here, though, is how does the crib look? Well, we've got 6 and 8, which means that a lot of the time the 7s that appear, oh, and also we have a 3, so 3, 6 and 8 in hand. This means that a lot of the time when our opponent has a 7 in their hand, it doesn't combo with the rest of their hand. Another way to say that is that we block a lot of the combos that contain 7, and so we expect some 7s to be ending up in the crib, or we expect them to turn up in the crib a little bit more often than normal. So this 6-8 discard is a bit riskier than it would be if we, say, didn't have a 3s and 5s in hand. So why did I bring up the 3s and 5s? It's because these add to 8, and one of the ways that you might end up keeping 7s in your hand is with a combo like 3, 5, 7. The other combos that would keep 7 in your hands are runs, so things like 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9, and we've got 6 and 8 in our hand, so there's fewer of those in our opponent's hand. The last way that 7s end up getting kept in a hand is 7, 7, ace, those kinds of things. 7, 7, ace, a nice way of making 15. We don't really block any of those, so it's possible that they keep 7s in their hand. And if we were really worried about them, our opponent scoring in a big way, we might avoid throwing 6, 8 away and go 3, 6. Here, I'm quite happy to go 6, 8, and if we hit a 10, we're happy, and also we leave open the option of hitting a 4. Now, if we keep the 6 in our hand, we notice that we also have a lot of ways of getting a double run. However, if we keep 5, 5, 6, there aren't too many ways to keep a lot more guaranteed points. Although 5, 5, 6, and if we hit a 4, that is worth 12 points. That is pretty good. But I think I'm going to go for 6, 8. It's potentially not the best, but oh well. All right, the 3. We have 2, 4, 6, 8 points in hand. So what do we lead first? Well, we see 2 3s on board, so we're not likely to get doubled here. Opponent strangely has a 7 in their hand. What could possibly be the combo? Well, they might have a 6. If they do have a 6, they might play it once we play our 5. And then, if they have a 4, it's very hard for us to avoid getting another run put on us. But what else could we do? We can play a 2. I suppose that's what we should do. Let's play a 2 and avoid all complications. Now, if our opponent plays a 4 here, we're very sad. Opponent has double 6, which we didn't really expect because we had a 6 ourselves. 7, 6, 6, 9 for 8 points in our opponent's hand, and 2 points for a pair of 8s in their crib. Okay. 21, 24. We go with the old. So there's a choice here. We could go with the old 5 with lots of 10s, or we could ditch the queen king, and we keep 4 points, so 2 10s in our hand in a sense, 3 7 5 and 5 10, and we leave open the option of getting some runs if we hit a 4 or a 6. In a lot of hands, keeping 3 7 10 is 3 7 5 is the best way of maximizing the potential points in your hand. It's better than keeping, say, 2 8 5, which also adds to 15, but it doesn't make as many runs. Here, though, we'll take the concrete points. It's always hard to say no to points. 3 7. We would have preferred those in our crib, but let's see what they have left. 8. And it's always good practice to think about what our opponent's last card's going to be. They've shown us 3 7 8. Well, it could be a 4 for the 3 4 8 for 15, or it could be a 5 for the 3 5 7 for 15, or the 3 could just be a red herring, and their last card actually combos with the 7 8. So a 7 7 8, 6 7 8, 7 8 9. Quite a lot of options here. But the one thing we do note is that the other thing they could have, I guess, is a 2. That's a lot lower percentage than the others. Might even be lower percentage than another 3. But that would be the only way that our opponent could get points out of pairing if we played 5 here. But king is extremely safe. Oh, they did have a 2. What do you know? Nothing in the crib. All good. Okay. We have a long run available to us for 4 points. Or we could keep 4 6 for some reason and throw away 10 king. So famously, 10 king is the discard that scores the least on average in the crib. Unfortunately, 10 king does have a fairly large standard deviation. It has a high variance throwaway compared to some other things like 6 king. 6 king has a higher average, but it's more consistently a lower point discard. The reason why 6 king would score more is because our opponent can throw away things like 9s in the crib. Now, we shouldn't get too excited to throw away things like 6 king or 6 10. Although it is a pretty reasonable play, I would do this sometimes, but since we're a little bit ahead, I don't think there's any reason not to throw away 4 6. If we were really worried about our opponent getting a massive score and pulling really far ahead positionally, then we might not throw away 4 6 because 4 6 will combo with 5s, and our opponent would like to throw away 5s into their crib. But it's hard to say no to 4 points, and these 4 points do get better. There are 12 cards that turn this from 4 points into 10 points, and of those, a few of those turn them into 11 points, because we have a jack. Okay, well, 4 points turns into 5 points, and we have to work out which 10 to lead. I'm leading these days a lot of queens, and sometimes some jacks. You have to think about balancing out what you're doing. So, effectively, you want to think about what are the different kinds of hands you would have where you'd want to lead a 10. For instance, of the hands that you would have here, how many of those are going to be things that have double 10 in them when you lead a 10? And if the answer is, I don't really have double 10 in my hand very often and lead it, then that might be a part of your game you have to change in order to protect hands like this. because whenever you'll get hands like this quite a lot, where you get a run of length 3 or 4 with lots of 10s in, but none of them are doubled, and then your opponent's really safe to just pair any of your 10s whenever they get the opportunity. They know that the 10 you lead is you lead 10s so often when you don't have them paired that you can't they're not too worried about getting tripled. And what I tend to do is, if I have pairs of 10s, I do often lead them. So if I've got a pair of 10s, then we'll lead one of those 10s. And the 10s that you see most often in double runs are queens and jacks, and then 10s. Are 10s more common? I guess 10s are probably the most common 10. 10s are the most common 10 to appear in a double run, because the 10 appears in the most number of runs. But the queen appears less often, but I do like to lead queen whenever I can. I think we're going to start by leading a queen, because our opponent has fewer of them. Because the queen is at the end of the run, there are fewer of them. Okay, 7-2 with a 7 on top. Opponent has lots of 6s in their hands. They have some 8s. And because of that, we're going to lead the 10. And our opponent has a jack. Don't really understand why they played the jack instead of the 6, but maybe that's just the medium computer for you. Okay, in my head we have two options. We could either keep the 5-6-7 run, and we can keep that run together with a 9 or a king, so throwing away, say, 2-9 or 2 king. And the other option is to throw away 5 and 10. Because we spot 2-6-7 is a combo for 15, and we have 6-9 as a combo for 15, so this would score 6 points immediately, and the others would score 5 points immediately, but they do have a run in them, and runs can turn into double runs very easily. I'm going to go and throw away 5 king into the crib. It's nice to put 5s into our crib. Alright, opponent leads 7, and this gives us a chance to do some fancy stuff. Here we can play a 2, if we like. We can play a 7, of course, the pair of set pairs the 7. Because we spot 3 7s on the board, we might think that the 7's very safe. But the thing that I'm going to do, which is kind of fancy, should I do it? I'm going to play the 9. And this effectively baits the 8. And if our opponent plays an 8, we have a 6. And we've effectively just traded ourselves up for 1 point. And we pair this 6 because it's very safe. Opponent has an ace. We're expecting our opponent to have maybe another ace for 6, 7, ace, ace. But a king doesn't make too much sense. It turns out they had 7, 7, ace for 4 points though. The extra 7 combos nicely with our hand. We have one of these hands where if we get another copy of any of the cards, it turns into 8 points. And we get one of these very rare flushes in the crib. So, lucky us. Alright, 66 versus 39. We're coming up to the penultimate positional milestone at 70 points, and looking down at our hand, we know that we're going to get at least 4 points out of this. We can spot a couple of different ways to score 6. We're so far ahead that we're thinking about trying to skunk our opponent, making sure that really happens. And what's the best way to guarantee that? We could try and avoid them getting points in the crib by going 9 jack, that means that if they throw away 8s and 8s come up, then it's not guaranteed that they're going to get a run. If we want to score a little bit more ourselves, then we can go 9, 10. The jacks are worth a little bit more to us because around a quarter of the time it's going to be worth an extra point because there are a lot of hearts left in the deck. In fact, if we think about it, we see 6 cards, one of them's a heart. That means there's 12 cards left that are hearts and 46 cards. And so that means that a little over a quarter of the time, because 4 12s are 48, which is more than 46. So more than a quarter of the time, this jack's worth an extra point. So this 10 is worth less than, this jack is worth more than a quarter of a point, this 9. But let's try and place something safe and hope to avoid getting the run in the crib. We hit a 4 on top, which is excellent news. And now we should think about our strategy. There's 2 strategies we could do here. We can lead the 2 because we have 2 2s, which would mean that if our opponent decides to pair our 2, we can get the triple. And the other strategy is to leave the pair for later. Because it's a low pair, sometimes we can sneak in and get a pair before or after our opponent says go. In this case, I like leading 3 and try and get the pair later. Playing the 10 is quite risky because our opponent could get 31 if they have another 9, and they could also get a 3-card run if they have an 8. So we'll just go to 14. Opponent does have an 8, and we're thinking now that a very natural card for them to have is a 7. So when we play our 2 here, it's not going to be too surprising if they make 31 with a 7. But no, they have a 4 instead, and they say go, so maybe they've got a 5 or a 10. We get an excellent score in our hand, and we are looking like we're looking to skunk our opponent from this great position. We look down and we see 6, 9, 9 is a good combo, and we're wondering which card to throw away. We're thinking the king because it doesn't combo with anything, and we notice that 8, 9, 9 is 1 card away from being a double run, so that leads us to 3 king. The other thing that leads us to 3 king is that 3 is less than 5, so there are combos, there are 2s that can make this into 15. And we can do no wrong, clearly. We hit the double run with the 10 on top, and we're thinking about what to play here. We have a few options. One thing that's probably not an option is to play the 6, because that leaves the 4, 5, 6 to make 15 and gets 5 points for our opponent. We could play the 9 or the 8. The 9's interesting and is the card that you'd often pick here, because if our opponent doubles it, then we can triple the 9 and we make 31, because 9, 9, 9 adds to 27, and there's 4 on the board already for 31. But I'm going to try and be clever, and I remember that I threw away a 3, so there are fewer 3s left, and I'm going to play this 8. And that way we avoided our opponent getting to 15. Okay, and what do we want to do here? Well, one thing we might notice is that our opponent has played 2, 4. They don't have a 3 though, so we're not worried about doing something like playing a 6, our opponent going up to 20, our opponent plays 3, up to 23, we say go, and they pair their 3 with another 3. We are a little bit worried about things like our opponent having a 9 here, because they've shown something that adds to 6. But they can't have too many 9s. It's very rare for them to have the last 2 9s. And because they don't have 2 3s, I'm a bit confused about what they could have. Maybe they have 5-6 left in hand. That kind of makes sense. So I only want them to play one of those cards. So let's play the 9 here. I've sort of convinced myself not to play the 6 because they might have 6s and they don't have 8s, so we're not running into any 31s. Well, they could have an 8, but it's quite rare. Ace 2 4. Right. Interesting. And they don't have a 3, so maybe they just have a really bad hand and they just have a 10. There we go. Sometimes you just have to call that your opponent has a bad hand. Okay, we're storming ahead, 94.58. We look down and we see a really long run. We see the 4 to 8. Now what does this mean? Well, we should often think about 4 to 8 in 2 pieces. Think about the 7, 8 as one piece and the 4, 5, 6 as the other piece. 4, 5, 6 is a piece because it gives us 3 points, but it also adds to 15. So I like here throwing away 2, 8. The other option is to keep the other long run because this has 7, 8 in it, and that makes 6 points. 6 points in another way. It's actually kind of tricky. Well, one rule of thumb that I have in such positions, and I noted this in a previous game, is when you don't know what to do, think about the low cards. So here we've got 2 options, and the thing that's changing is we're either throwing away the 4 or the 8. Let's have a think about low cards, aces and 3s, and how they would change how we make 15s. Well, in this hand, if we throw away 2, 4, aces would make 15 with 6, 8. Whereas in this hand, aces don't do anything, right? Ace 6, 7, that's 14, and you can keep going through the others. And then the other cards, 2s, 3s, 4s, they combo almost the same. The thing to remember is that the way that 4 combos it with this hand is similar to how 8 combos with this hand. So if we throw away 2, 4, then we have to equate hitting a 4 with, if we throw away 2, 8, hitting an 8. And so we see that the difference is only really the ace, and so that leads us to thinking about throwing away 2, 4, that should be the higher expected value discard. Except whenever we're worried about what our opponent gets in the crib. Because if we throw away 2, 4, our opponent can throw away 9s and 3s. We don't have any 9s and 3s in hand, so they're going to get a lot of points out of that. With 2, 8, we hold a 5 in hand, and we have a 7 in hand, so the chances of them comboing off 2, 8 is a lot lower. But in this case, I'm going to be very greedy and just go for all the points, and I don't care if they get 3 3s out of this and get 16 points, we're still going to win. Alright, we get a 10 on top, absolutely fine. What do we want? To lead. How do we want to play this? Now this is not a hand I get very often, so I think we're going to start by leading. Well, leading a 5 doesn't make sense because we don't have any 10s really to to get any points back, and we also don't block any 10s, so our opponent has lots of 10s here. I could see leading a 7 or an 8. I could see leading an 8, trying to leave 6-7 to trap a 5 later. Could also see leading a 7, leaving us with the most spread out cards, giving us more playability later. Let's go with the 8 and watch out. We can go... I think we should either go 6 or 7 here, because if we play a 5, our opponent can really safely pair our 5. If we play a 7, our opponent can't pair our 7, so let's do that. Our opponent now has shown to us that they can't play on 25, which means the rest of their cards are 7 or higher. That means that our 5 isn't going to get paired later if we leave it, so we can very happily play the 6. And our opponent probably just has a lot of 10s left. At that point, you can work out all of the possible ways the game could finish, this round could finish, and you could see that we're very likely to, our opponent's very likely to get 2 points from the go. Okay. We see a run in our hand, 8, 9, 10. We see a pair in our hand, queens, and we see a single card, 4. So we can put the 4 with the run, and we can discard the pair. The only time you wouldn't do this is if you're really desperate for points. If you're really desperate for points, you probably have to throw away 8, 9, and just pray for the jack. We're not, so we won't. Now, if we pair this 8 and our opponent triples, our opponent's also quite likely to have 7s in their hand. Why is that? Well, we haven't seen anything to do with 7s, and our opponent's led an 8. Alright, we can assume that our opponent thinks this is the best lead. One thing I do like here is playing the 4. It leaves us with a lot of high cards that are close together, but they're in a good position. If our opponent plays a 10, then we can play a 9 for 31. If our opponent plays another 8, then we can pair the 8. The only thing is our opponent can have 3s and 4s themselves. But maybe we get the thinking that if our opponent did have that, then they might have led one of them, unless they've got double 8s. So we'll play the 4 and we'll hope for the best. They did have double 8. Now, this doesn't mean that they don't have a 3. They could have a 3 and just not want to play it. So we'll pair the 8. They have 4s and more. They've revealed so far 8, 8, jack. Nines and 10s seem very reasonable for them to have here. I expect them not to have queens because we had queens. So what do we do? If we play a 9 and they play a 10, we get the run of 3. And if we play a 10 and they play 9, they get a run of 3. Doesn't seem like one good option here. One thing we can do is assume that our opponent has kept the strongest thing, and what's stronger out of 9 or 10? Well, the 9's stronger, because the 9, 8, 8 makes more runs, and when it makes runs, they're usually worth a lot of points because they'll be with a 7. So we should give the 9 fewer points, and we'll play the 9 ourselves. They had a 6, so our thinking was not doing much. All right, 117 to 74. Our opponent says that they've got this. Don't think that's quite right. we see 2-3-3, which is the starts of a double run, and it's also two ways of making 5. So we think to ourselves, we either want to throw away 8-10 or 8-queen. 8 queen's a lot safer, but at this point it doesn't matter. We're about to win, so the only thing we have to do is decide what we want for the play. The only way for our opponent to get back is to score 16 points on the play, or 17 points on the play. Not going to happen. We'll lead a 3. If they pair our 3, we triple it and finish straight away. We play 2 to get the 15. There's a chance that opponent plays something strange, or we get the go here, and maybe they lead a queen and we pair it. Opponent has very strange looking cards there, and we get our points and win. That was a nice straightforward game. Let's see what the tail was from the points. We got 26 on the play to our opponent's 13. We got 84 points in hand. We did extremely well, 32 more than our opponent, and we got some pretty great cribs, 18 versus 10. So, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.